Do you and your spouse have different intimacy needs? Tune in today as we share some expert tips on communicating your desires, validating each other's feelings, and finding a loving compromise that can strengthen your relationship. Because, my friends, it is not easy to navigate, and I see this again and again among my clients. So these simple tips will help you take your relationship to the next level and improve your intimacy. So stay tuned. Hey parents, welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. Do you want to raise your kids better and have a stronger marriage? Are you up late at night researching marriage and parenting tools and self-care tips? Do you start each day hoping for deeper connections and less chaos, but it ends with family arguments and going 12 different directions again? My name's Kendra, wife, mom, therapist, and growth enthusiast. It wasn't until I discovered how to fulfill my unmet needs that I was finally able to show up as my best self as a spouse and parent. I realized that by meeting my needs, I could more fully meet the needs of my family with more energy and less resentment. In this podcast, I teach parents skills like boundary setting, prioritizing personal needs, communication, and claiming ownership. Just like my clients, you'll be shocked by the improvement in your marriage, parenting, and personal life when you focus on fulfilling your important unmet needs. Ready to prioritize yourself so you can quit mentally throat punching people? Then grab those earbuds and head outside, and let's walk and talk. Welcome back, my friends, to episode number 146, Navigating Intimacy Need Differences with Your Spouse. I really wanted to talk about this today because, again, as always, when I start to see a pattern with my clients, I think, okay, this is something that needs to be spoken to because we are all struggling with it. And as of yet, I have never had a couple come in that have said, our intimacy needs are the same. We want intimacy just as much, both of us, and we're totally content in our intimate lives. That just doesn't happen. And if you are one of those couples, well, then this episode is not for you. And I very much applaud you. So good job. Reach out to me and we'll have you on the show and we'll find out how you do it. If you are not one of those people, this episode will help you. So on Fulfillment Therapy, we really do focus on enhancing personal and family fulfillment. But today's topic is specifically about marriage. So navigating those intimacy need differences with your spouse. And we're going to talk about the difference in sexual desire that are common in relationships and how we can communicate better to bridge those gaps and find a balance that will enrich your marriage. But before we get started, make sure you check out our show notes and find us in all the places. We have both a private and public Facebook group, and we have an Instagram page, and I'm also on almost everything else, but I don't always go on those other places as often. Best place to reach me is to go on fulfillment.Therapy.org and hit connect, and you can get a hold of me that way. And also in the show notes, there is a phone number where you can text to get your questions answered. Or if you want to buy something, but you have a few questions before buying, go ahead and text us those questions. And me or a team member will get back to you with those answers as soon as we can. All right, now back to the training. Let's discuss how to understand intimacy needs. So like I said, intimacy needs can really vary quite a bit between spouses. One might have this really high sexual desire and the other one has a very low need. This often leads to frustration and misunderstanding and sensitivity and a plethora of other things if it's not addressed. It really is important to communicate openly about your needs and preferences so that both partners feel heard and respected. Now, this is a tall order because it is one of the most sensitive subjects ever. So we'll just talk about a few simple ways to do that today. And like always, I love to share some quotes. So this one is by Dr. Emily Nagoski, but she says, Healthy communication about sexual desires is essential for a fulfilling relationship. It's about expressing your needs without demanding or pressuring your partner. My friends, I want you to think about those times in your life. In your relationship, has there been unfair demands or pressuring by your partner? Now, if there has been, I encourage you to get a counselor or talk to them because, again, mostly our partner is not trying to hurt us. There are a few exceptions to that. Mostly, they might not even be aware that it's coming across as demanding or as pressure that's making it more difficult for you. So, again, we'll get to some of those things more deeply in just a moment. But Esther Perel, I love her, she said, "Intimacy should be a choice, not an obligation. True intimacy arises from mutual desire and respect." Now, as I read that, there's so many things I love about that, but I can just hear some of my clients saying, well, I don't have any desire for intimacy. Well, when other things are worked through and those layers are peeled back and you get to the deeper work, that often heals over time, maybe not on the timetable that you would want. But if that is you and you do not have any intimacy desires, what we often find is it's a mental thing, an emotional thing from past trauma or whatever it might be. And that is where you need to seek more help. Sometimes it is a hormone thing, but I have not found that to be as true as the trauma thing, because that can affect other areas of your physical health as well. But again, she said intimacy should be a choice, not an obligation. There was a long time when I was intimate in our first half of our marriage, probably because I felt like it was an obligation. That if I didn't do it, that it would just cause problems in our relationship and just all sorts of thoughts that I had. And it wasn't until I saw it as a choice and that I got feedback from my own counselor, that was not the best way to go about it. So explore that a little bit. And if you cannot be present or do it because you want to, not even necessarily that you're feeling like you really need that, but like you want to be connected with your spouse and you want that level of closeness, then it changes the tone of intimacy. Okay, my third and final quote is by Dr. John Gottman. I quote him a lot too, but he said, "Understanding and validating your partner's feelings while also standing by your own is key to navigating differences in intimacy needs." So it's about, it always goes back to these, about understanding and validating your spouse and standing by your own, like not neglecting your own needs, your own feelings either. And that is how your intimacy can really improve. Just like our last episode, I'm just going to give you 10 quick tips on how you can do this and how you can navigate those intimacy differences with your spouse today. So the first one is probably pretty obvious. The first one is having an open dialogue. I was not comfortable in the beginning talking about intimacy needs with my spouse, and I needed to practice that. It's just not a natural thing, especially if you come from a religious background and you haven't been intimate before marriage, or maybe you haven't been intimate very much. Regardless, it's not something that is often very comfortable for many of us. So schedule a time to talk about intimacy needs without distractions. So if your kids are around and knocking on the door a lot, this might not be the best time. So do this when you can both feel comfortable and both feel heard. So maybe have your clothes on, for example, or just anything that you can do to feel validated. Anything you can do to feel comfortable. Like maybe this is not looking in each other's eyes initially. Maybe this is holding hands when you do it. Maybe this is having one person share that's more comfortable first. Or maybe this is even writing stuff out and then switching it and reading it. Like maybe you don't even want to say it out loud at first. It's just that slow incremental growth to be more open about it. Number 2, express without blame. I talk about this all the time with my clients. So use I statements to express your needs, like I feel loved when we are physically intimate, something like that, instead of blaming or criticizing them and saying something like you never want to have sex or you never want to be intimate and I need it way more and it's not fair. Something like that where it feels more like an accusation. Number 3, understand their perspective. Take the time to understand your spouse's feelings and why their needs might differ from yours. This really does build that empathy and reduces the tension. It reminds me of some of my clients, especially the moms that feel just so exhausted and felt needed all the time. And some of them, like if they're nursing, they're touched all the time. They always have to give. And the last thing they want is somebody touching them or needing them. It just feels like another child when they're so threadbare. And maybe this is you. Well, if you express that empathy to their situation, or maybe even say, maybe this is how you feel, that really can reduce that tension in your relationship and increase connection, which in turn usually creates more intimacy. Number 4, please avoid pressure. Intimacy cannot be forced or done out of obligation. There really needs to be that mutual consent and desire really are crucial for a healthy sexual relationship. I've had several clients say that there has been too much pressure and they've really struggled to climax because of it. Like, especially women, that's something that's not as easy. And if they're so in their head about if their husband is going to be upset or frustrated or that they have to do something, it's often almost impossible to relax enough to make that enjoyable. And then that just creates a cycle that is hard to get out of. Keep in mind, women, that you might feel very pressured, and if you are not communicating that, they don't understand that they are even pressuring you sometimes. So don't just assume that that's reality. Check with them, communicate that, and see what you get back, because often I find the other spouse is surprised by that and like, oh, it can be a simple fix. Number 5, acknowledge and validate each other's feelings and needs, even if they differ, because honestly they will. And this really does foster that supportive and loving environment. It's often my clients say, well, I don't really agree with this. You don't have to agree with it. You're different people. But validating their feelings softens hearts. Validating doesn't say, I agree with everything you said. It just means that you can be empathetic and you can understand their perspective, even if your perspective might differ. Number 6, find compromise. So look for that middle ground where both of you can feel satisfied. So this might involve finding new ways to connect physically and emotionally. This might mean you have different desires, and this might mean that you have different hopes and desires in intimacy. But when you actually talk about that and get to that point where you feel where bit by bit you're communicating more and more, you can look forward to intimacy when you find that there is more compromise in that. Number 7. My friends, please be patient. When we are navigating those differences, those different needs, that really does require patience on both partners. So give yourself time to adjust and find what works best for both of you. And don't give up. This does take time, and this is such a tender, vulnerable topic. So know that it can change if you are patient with one another and continue to communicate. Now, if one of you is completely unwilling, that's again where I would say get extra help, get more educated. You can even start as simply as looking into podcast episodes or reading a book about it together or getting help. And maybe they don't want to get a counselor. Then maybe it starts with you and you work on your side of the street, which actually goes right along with number 8, which is often talked about when we talk about these sensitive subjects. Seek professional help. If intimacy issues really do persist and you're not finding any resolutions, then get the help of a therapist. Maybe even see your doctor, see if there's a hormone imbalance. See a therapist together when possible, especially if it's a mutual thing, which it often is, but not always. Like in the case of sexual abuse, often that spouse will need to get help because they have some deeper layers that may be causing that rift. And that professional can offer some strategies and support for bridging those intimacy gaps, which is what we all want. Even if you think you don't want it, the intimacy part you may not think you want, but that connection part we all really do want. And if you don't, again, there's something deeper and seek that help. Number 9. Maintain other forms of intimacy. So physical intimacy is just one aspect of a relationship, my friend. Focus on the other things too, like emotional or intellectual intimacy that can really strengthen your marriage bond. This is having hobbies together. This is talking about your feelings. This is getting educated together. This is so much more than just the one way to connect. Because if it's only that, then one partner might feel that it's too much weight. There's too much riding on that being the only way to connect. And last but not least, number 10, prioritize connection. I've talked about this before with connection bids, and you can go back to that one if you want and look at that one for ideas on how to create more connection bids. But this is about making an effort to connect daily through those small gestures, through those simple conversations and those shared activities. And this is what keeps the relationship strong and fulfilling. For example, my husband and I are so much more connected when we are physical together outside of intimacy. So we love to play pickleball together. We love to go swimming together, especially in the summers or the spring. All of those times, we really lot more things. We go camping together. We go biking together. All of those things, it seems like we can be more playful and let things go when we are active together. So we just love it. And that's how we prioritize connection. But we also do regular date nights. I really personally love it when we do it with other couples because that also meets my social need since I'm home alone a lot, building out my business and doing other things, meeting with clients. It's just not the same when it's not face-to-face with loved ones, with friends, things like that. So think about what helps you feel stronger in your relationship and communicate that and do more of that together. By addressing and navigating the intimacy need differences, you really can achieve greater marital fulfillment. I promise you. That open communication and understanding how to create that deeper connection ensure that both of you can feel loved and respected. This will not only enhance the sexual aspect of your relationship, but it will also strengthen the overall emotional bond, which leads to a more fulfilling life together. Remember, my friends, the goal is to navigate intimacy differences with empathy, with communication, always, and love, that tender, validating love and empathy. When we implement these 10 tips that I just mentioned, you can really maintain a loving and supportive dialogue, and by doing so, you create a more balanced and fulfilling intimate relationship. Have patience, my friends. These things will come bit by bit as you practice these simple tools. So often it goes back to simple answers, and yet how easy is it to dismiss those simple answers when we're looking for something far more advanced that we have never heard of before and kind of missing the mark when it just takes some of these simple things. So lean into that incremental growth. Take one of these simple tips with you and implement it for that incremental growth. As always, please share this episode with a friend, somebody that you know might be struggling to navigate those intimacy need differences with their own spouse. And join us next time on Fulfillment Therapy for more insights on how to nurture a happy and fulfilling marriage, personal life, and family life. And I'll see you back here in just a few days. All the best, my friends. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you, no matter what your house or your hair looks like. I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.